It's an argument that we've been making all around, and they haven't sufficiently answered it. Are racist actions toward Muslim and Arab Americans what causes the hatred terrorists have against America? The impacts of bioterror is very low probability because it's immensely difficult for terrorists to create bioweapons and then to deploy them. Empirics prove that all attempts so far have failed. This proves our util arguments on how if government uses util, they will continuously play up the threats and ignore the problems like racism. Racism happening for certain 100%. That is unacceptable. That's Shamsi 14. Journalism is key to break down and reveal the racist practice of the government and create the incentive for change. Moving on to solvency. They have conceded solvency, which means that the New Freedom Act does not extend our Terrorism 14 evidence and the Green 15 evidence that talks about how the New Freedom Act's language is too watered down and that provisions from the old Freedom Act are necessary to keep that in check, and so that people can't just use loopholes. And on to journalism. All they said that in response is that chilling is a lie, but extending our Wong 15 and Sinha 14 evidences, and that surveillance actually hampers journalism and is creating the chilling effect, and preferred these evidences because they're from actual journalists, whereas they didn't really actually read a card for this evidence, card for this argument. And moving on to bigotry. Okay. So they extended their Issac 2 card on why util is better, but reject this argument because using util ignores the issues like racism. If life is important, then we must do our best to give everyone the best possible life. They say that we need to solve for extinction first, and that outweighs, but that only proves our point that util justifies atrocities, and that's Holt 95. And also, like, we extend our arguments that talk about how the government is like playing up the problem, and how the impacts that of bioterror actually aren't even that true because it's not probable, but they keep on saying that it's going to happen, and that they're using that to justify being racist, and that's bad. And also they read this Mcdounough 15 evidence, or like 5 cards by Mcdounough 15, all from the same book, about talking about how our epistemology is wrong, but reject their argument because, like I said before, they're all by the same author, where we give multiple different authors with multiple different positions, which means we have more perceptions, and therefore we are more credible. Like extended Unegma 13 evidence, which talks about how warrantless surveillance is racist, and extend our Stanfield 13 evidence that talks about how mass surveillance is selective, and that them saying that they just follow up on these leads is actually false. They're actually not. The surveillance is actually racist, and only the affirmative solves for this. Moving on to the Disad. So they said that Disad outweighs the case and turns the case, but that's wrong because we did a lot of impact calc on why bioterrorism isn't going to happen, that they didn't really answer that well, and because of that, one, the Disad doesn't outweigh, and then the turns they read, which is the Akram 2 and the Clarke 13, don't really work. So they dropped my partner's argument from the 1AR about the durable fiat, so that takes out their Clarke 13 evidence about how Clarke 13 evidence about rollback, and because that makes the question not from should the plan pass to will a plan pass, and that's not good for debate. And then so that takes out the Clarke 13 turn, and for the Akram 2 term, Boston bombing is an empiric that prove at least that a terrorist attack doesn't lead to more surveillance or more racism, and they made the argument that racism can't be quantified, so you can't say more or less, and that's true, but we didn't see the spike in hatred like the Akram 2 is talking about. So there's actually a net less racism if we pass the plan, because for certain we can cut down on the amount of surveillance. And moving on, they said that motivations can lead to bioterror. Extend the Ogram Gromley 14 cards that talk about even if terrorists really want to do, it's improbable because they won't be able to really get any of the necessary components to make a bomb. They won't be smart enough to actually be able to develop the bomb, and they won't be actually able to deploy the bomb effectively. And that's why you can't vote for this team.